Hello everyone, I'm Ink with Ketchup, and today we're going to be talking about the Seraphim I just showed you guys. Now, this video is going to go into the basic introduction for the piece, which is the purpose, materials, process, and lessons learned at the very end. And let me just start off by saying that the actual process for this piece was a complete trip to hell. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong, and anything that I want to go right definitely didn't happen. It was a complete nightmare working on this, and I made mistakes every step of the way, but I really want to share that with you guys because it really happens sometimes when you have an art piece where you have a terrible time and the process for it is a complete disaster, but the final piece is something you're so extremely proud of that it makes it all worth it in the end. And I'm going to be walking you guys through that. I'm going to show you guys every single mistake I made, and then we're going to wrap it up at the end with all the lessons I learned from it. So I will see you guys there. Now, why did I decide to draw a Seraphim? Now, for that, you can blame the amazing artist Dan Hillier and his fantastic illustration of a Seraphim. This thing is so detailed and so visually rich. When I first looked at it, it looked like a visual bar of chocolate for your eyes. It's just so complex with the layers of line work and collage detail all overlapping each other. It's just gorgeous work. And I loved it so much that I immediately knew that I want to do my own take on the same subject matter with a stronger focus on individual line work. And line work really is a tricky thing sometimes, as the more lines you add, the less they inherently matter. And I want to do another version of Seraphim where every single line is trying to convey the maximum amount of information, and I'm trying to pull it off with my own style. With this decision being made on how I was going to approach the piece, I could really start looking at different options for illustrators and the kinds of line work they use so I could emulate my own line work after it. I could go more American classic like Nathan Yoder, who uses simply tapering off lines to nothing, which gives it a strong classical American feel to it. I could go more French style like Mobius with still tapering lines but off to dots, which gives it still a substantial amount of control, but the dots give it a much smoother gradient. Or I could go classic manga like Berserk, which would make the Seraphim look far more violent, a lot more scary, and bring a stronger contrast to the darks. And for this, I actually chose a compromise. I decided I was going to go Mobius' style, but I was going to invert it and approach the piece backwards. Instead of inking with black ink on white paper, I was going to do white ink on black paper. And by doing this, I would be creating a much more classical French Gustave Doré engraving style feel, which would make the piece overall look more scary and more classical, but still giving it that smooth gradient seen in Mobius' work. And I was going to take all the ideas, smush them together, and see how the whole thing turns out. The process for this sucked. I felt like I was battling demons. I felt like I was fighting my own mind during this. I, being a baby brain fool, only prepped a single rough drawing of the illustration. So when I actually started inking, I quickly realized that single rough drawing wasn't nearly detailed enough for something like this. And I quickly ran into issues, extreme issues of having to create guiding lines for every single thing I was doing while I was inking. So I was just flipping back and forth between a really illustration and rough draft of the actual piece to the actual prep piece of black paper. And I was just going back and forth. So of course I needed to make a lot of guiding lines to the actual inking so I could properly work on it. And then of course, while I was doing that, multiple mistakes just kept flowing through and they just kept happening. And I had to proactively fix them while I was actually doing the final inking on the prep piece of paper. But this does not even hold a candle to the major issue of the blobs. These blobs literally drove me insane. I had only ever inked on paper before, and I was only used to inking on paper. I had never inked before on an entire 18 by 24 piece of paper that had been painted black. And this pen clearly wasn't made for it either. So as I was inking, I realized that the pen would just get filled with this black gook, and then it would just cough up these white blobs of ink all over the piece I been working on for so long, and it was just destroying the line work. It was just filling the whole piece of art that I've been struggling with for so long with all these disgusting dots. And the whole idea I had for this piece was that there was going to be a smooth gradient, a transition, so the angel would look more ghostly and more cool. But these fucking dots were destroying it, and making the whole thing just like look like a like base sheet of like gray. And I was so infuriated. I realized what I had to do. I had to go over every single line again up to 4 times and reinforce the actual white lines and then paint in between every single line the negative space of black with a black pen. That means for every single line I had to go over it 4 times and I had to paint the negative space around it just to reestablish the actual like structure of the line work. Okay, so lessons learned from this piece. What did I learn from making this? Always create a highly detailed, well thought out illustration and structure for the piece before you dive headfirst in. Another one is materials. Make sure to experiment with the materials and actually run tests of them before actually diving headfirst in. So I could have mitigated like the whole issue of having to like readjust like my line work and everything. And finally, make sure to actually plan out the piece properly on the actual materials well, and not just rely on guiding lines, because those guiding lines and having to eliminate them afterwards with black ink end up being a massive headache. But besides that, the piece was a success. Really happy with how it went, and I hope you guys enjoy.